Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Bomber Banter. It is the post replay review post our game against the Geelong Cats in round 14. Not a fun one, hey, but doing this now a day later and having watched the replay, this is not going to be overly surprising review for you guys, because I think we all know logically what happened, if we're being honest, and why, more importantly. And I think a lot of us weren't expecting much more from this game, were we? We sort of felt like it was coming against Brisbane and then maybe coming against Carlton, and then this was probably just a bridge too far for this group against just an exceptional opponent. I thought when we versed the Bulldogs that they were the top echelon, but Geelong just took it to another level, as they always do. I mean, we'll start from the start. There was a genuine appetite for the contest. I think, the effort was there, the intent was there. Yes, there were moments where the Geelong players just worked harder, but I think it looked like they were working harder because they had so much help and so much support from fellow teammates that it was almost effortless for them. And it wasn't so much that they were working harder, they were just supported better by their teammates, with more run and carry, with more players on the right side of the contest, on the right side, instead of being goal side, they had players on the attacking and defensive side as support if a turnover occurred. And so when they did make a turnover, it was an easy clean up, an easy fix. Whereas we haven't learnt those habits yet. These boys don't know the habits of each other and the habits necessarily of the game plan and the structure that the coaches want them to play. So whilst it did look like they were outworking us at times, and probably maybe they were, it's easier to work harder when you have that help running alongside you than it is when you're doing all the work for you and have to run around in a circle in order to get 5 seconds of space. So I don't think it was an effort thing. I think I think the intent was there. What's very obvious is that the plan was to not go in your shells no matter what. So the young players were all really aggressive with their kicks coming outside of 50. It was so noticeable, especially on the replay, that there was no backwards and sideways kicking. It was look for the corridor, try and find an option. And if it's a 50-50 kick, take it. Back yourself in, be brave. And if it gets cut off, it gets cut off, then you work on winning the ball back. And it's not so much that the first part in that missing that 50-50 kick, it's what we do after the ball gets turned over. And I don't know the stats, but it feels like our ability to win the ball back once it's turned over or fight for possession back is non-existent at the moment. And whether that's we're not getting to the right spots to clean up our own turnovers, or it's the opposition, not sure. But there was a very clear directive for the boys not to go into their shell and just to retreat to kicking sideways and backwards, because to be honest, that would have had the same impact. Geelong's press is so clinical and their forward 50 pressure is so clinical that they would have won the ball back anyway. So it wouldn't have made much of a difference, and maybe would have helped the bleeding. Maybe it wouldn't have been close to 100 points lost, but I don't think it would have helped that much. Early on, it definitely felt like, especially on the replay, boys versus men. A lot of our young boys were missing tackles. Lawal and Clark in particular, it looked like boys trying to tackle big grown men, and the only ones who were sticking their tackles, which I said on Twitter last night, was Parrish and Setterfield, and that's what you expect from them. But it did look like a complete distinction in class and experience, which again, of course it should. This Geelong team has been together for a long time. They're coming from a very, very high base, and we are coming from a base of nothing. I didn't bother. There's plenty of people on Twitter and online throwing around all the stats of how young we were in comparison to Geelong and how many games less experienced we were. So that's the obvious stuff. You don't need me to tell you that. it's obvious. We had first gamers, second gamers, third gamers, fourth gamers, fifth gamers, and then a few experienced players bristled in amongst that. So this was always going to happen. The synergy that I just rate so highly as a component in AFL football is just, yeah, it's not existent. They looked confused. They looked disconnected all over the ground, to be honest. In fact, probably the forward line looked the most consistent, to be honest, in terms of that metric, to my eyes anyway. I thought Peter Wright competed really well. I think this is another great lesson for Caddy. I think his development is going well because he's getting schooled on how hard he has to work, and his second efforts are just not there yet. And, in terms of, yes, he'll push hard and work hard up the ground, but when he figures out that he's out of a contest or he's about to get outbodied or outmarked, it's not that he's giving up. His mind is just not clicking into, what do I do immediately after that initial act? And that's something he's going to have to develop, and that's a skill, and that's a learned skill. But it's clearly, if I was coaching him in the off season, I've already got, right now at round 14, I've already got a list of things that he's going to be doing on repetition in the off season. Second efforts, balls just coming at him, and what is he doing in his second efforts? Getting those reflexes, absolutely cherry ripe. So he had a good contest, a good matchup. He got well beaten by the guy who Geelong took when they let us take Caddy. So another good matchup for him. In terms of people saying drop him to the VFL to get experience, I think he's getting the experience where he needs to get it, and that is against the bigger bodies and in the AFL. So I think his development is going along beautifully. He's not always going to excel, and I think it's those second efforts which are just going to take him to the next level. I want to talk about Merritt because whilst he did have a great second half, when he was moved into the midfield and played a lot more midfield, there's just so many concerning little uncharacteristic things coming from him early. And one in particular that I noticed on the replay this morning was in the first quarter, he was matched up on Bailey Smith in our forward line, and Bailey Smith was kicking the ball out from pretty much the last line of defence for them. And Bailey Smith and Merritt was on the mark, and Bailey Smith kicked the ball and then was off the mark in 1 second. And Merritt did the whole look where the ball's kicked. And when he looked, Bailey Smith's absolutely pounced off the mark, and Merritt's just done the, and rolled the eyes and slumped the head and didn't even bother to pretend to chase. And that's not something we're used to seeing from him. And that's why it's jarring because, and I pointed out a similar act in the last post-replay review last weekend that he did, where he just did that kind of thing in the middle of the ground and gave up on the chase or didn't even try. And yes, he could be carrying something, but that also shows to me it looks like a mental fatigue, like that whole body language, that switch in body language that we're not used to seeing from him. That tells me that there's a bit of mental fatigue there, and maybe, when you're in the guts of it, and when you've got a very clear role in that, you're carrying the team, you're in the middle, you've got to excel, you've got to get 100 clearances, and you know that the team's on your shoulders and you've just got to lock in and you can only focus on that. Sometimes that can be burying how you really feel inside and what you're really feeling. So when, just from a mental point of view and from a psychological point of view, when Brad Scott has said to him, look, we're going to move you out of the midfield to take a bit of load off you, and, so we can give some of the heaviness to Martin and Caldwell and Setters. Sometimes when you remove that load, you're left with the very true, real feelings of fatigue and energy dip and a bit of flatness that comes from carrying a team for so long and carrying so much responsibility for a huge Melbourne club. That it just what's left in its place is a bit of flatness and a bit of a bit of exhaustion, I guess, mental exhaustion. So I think psychologically that's what we're seeing from Merritt. He has the ability to dig in if he really, really has to, as all champions do. But I think if he's being honest with himself, and I think if you're trying to understand where he's at mentally, I think it's important to realise that he is probably just feeling a bit of the feels like he probably feels like he's on the merry-go-round, to be quite honest. And when you're having big losses and continual losses, especially when you're in the games, sometimes that can take a toll, basically. So I think maybe the bye coming up could be good for him to just disconnect and hopefully get away from football. We all know what a football nut he is, so maybe it will be good for him just to have a bit of a reset and a bit of a disconnection from the club and his responsibilities, And on the surface, you think, well, he's got less load, Martin stepping up in terms of leadership, 2 metre Peter stepping up in terms of leadership, and so is Setterfield. That should equate to him feeling lighter. But if you've done any kind of therapeutic work, you will know that when you remove the physical, when you take away the walls and you peel apart the onion, what's left under there is all the trauma and all the triggers and all the heaviness that kind of needs working through. So, and healing, a bit of healing, from that. So certainly, obviously, he's got many credits in the bank in terms of where he stands for us. But it's a very obvious unmerit-like figure we're seeing out there in terms of, very simple kicks and handballs that he usually just gobbles up with his eyes closed that are missed. I'm not saying there's anything to worry about. I just am saying that that's probably what's going on for him. And it's probably it's got nothing to, not his fault at all. But on the flip side, I think would be bereft of me not to say, how impressed I am that Martin, Peter Wright and Setterfield have stepped up in the leadership department. I think those three are really carrying the load. It's a bit disappointing in terms of, not putting McGrath in that mix. But he probably does a lot of stuff off field that we don't see. That probably counts for a lot as well. So I'm really impressed with also the fitness of those three, Martin, 2 metre Peter and Setterfield. I mean, 2 metre Peter was on the ground for 95% of game time last night. And that's going up. He's just not plonked in the forward line. He's going up and back, chopping out Goldie in the ruck. So his fitness is at peak level. So is his confidence and presence, and that's a wonderful thing. And Setterfield has just gone to the next level. Absolutely, he looks so calm and so just never overawed by the moment. And Martin, obviously, we know has been exceptional all year in terms of his leadership too, and keeping the energy and keeping the group kind of level-headed and kind of motivated. So it's good to see that it's not, no Merritt, no Essendon in terms of that space. Obviously, we've got a long way to go, and there were many, 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 many warning signs last night. The skill is deplorable. And against very good pressure teams, it's even worse. So lots of work to be done there in the off season, but there's bigger issues at play, and that's the rehab group, and that's all of our personnel in the rehab group. And, hearing Brad Scott say, you can't bring 8 guys back after the bye. Well, why? Why not? I mean, when they're key players, I think you have to bring them back, all of them. I'm not saying you drop every kid, but you got to bring back straight away Ridley, Langford, Redmond, and Reid. That's just off the top of my head, the ones who are coming back. You bring them all back because you need to start getting some kind of synergy and chemistry back into this group so you can see what you've got and you can make clear decisions at the end of the year about about certain players and what we need to recruit and that kind of thing. We're getting a good insight into the kids at the moment. I mean, Johnson is one who I'm just absolutely loving. He's so thoughtful with his possession. He's the opposite of someone who just bombs. His mind doesn't go, oh, where can I bomb? It's this second he gets the ball is how can I use this ball well? And he's thoughtful and he looks around and he knows when he's about to be under pressure and when the pressure's coming, and he generally takes the right kick and he's brave. And I think I can't wait to see him in a system and in a group where he's not always under pressure and having to find that brave kick, but he can actually, make kicks that are there and they come off for him. So really impressed with his game, and I think he'll only continue to grow. Clark made some errors, but he's in a position where he's not overly comfortable in the back line because we had to. Will be nice to see him back on a wing doing what he does best, and that's just absolutely gut run up and down the wing, and run off his opponent and outrun his opponent to be a presence in the forward line. So, look, I think that's pretty much it in terms of the game. There wasn't much else. The game said more about Geelong and how good they are at punishing. They did to us what they should do to us. It shouldn't be a surprise that that's what happened. It felt like they're the most efficient team in the league at scoring from turnover. I think they're about the fourth, but I don't know. That's the most impressed I've been in terms of scoring or winning the ball back from turnover as I've seen this year. So they'll definitely be right up there come finals time. So, difficult night, but, there's reasons for it, and that's all I can say, really. So on that, it's time for the Twix Awards. I mean, hard, but three Twix goes to Setterfield, and then there feels like there's a bit of daylight, to be quite honest. He was by and large the absolute best on the ground without fail. He was exceptional in his pressure, in his leadership, in his, he had a couple of turnovers, but that's to be expected when you're getting so much of the ball and you're carrying such a heavy load and you're trying to watch very, very terrific ball winners and workers for the opposition in Max Holmes and Bailey Smith. And even after that chase, that gut run chase down of Max Holmes, he wasn't even puffing that hard when he lunged and when he got up and they panned on his face. He wasn't even puffing that hard. And I thought, man, you Meriden 2 metre Peter, your fitness is just at absolutely elite levels. And that don't think that's the fitness group. That's on the certain individuals. That's on those 3 individuals putting in extra work, never relenting, and working on themselves outside of the club. So well done, Setters. I mean, it feels like it's a bit of daylight, to be quite honest, but I'm here, so I'll give the 2 Twix. I'm going to give it to Johnson. I thought probably doesn't feel like a 2 Twix game, but I thought it was thoroughly deserved. Hopefully he gets the Rising Star nomination either this week or coming soon. I thought it's thoroughly deserved from his point of view. And the 1 Twix I gave to Guelphy purely because, his intent and his effort, and he tried the whole game and got on the end of a couple of goals himself. Tom Stewart's a hard man to pin down, and he kind of, lost the Guelphy tag quite a few times to man up on 2 metre Peter and Caddy at times as well. But I thought Guelphy was really locked in for the whole game. So, and in terms of half Twix, 2 metre Peter, Goldstein and Parrish, I got a bit of slack for saying Parrish was in our best midfield on Twitter. And I thought, I'm not going to bite back at these until I watch the replay and I confirm whether I was correct on the night saying it. And I stand by my call. I think Parrish, I'm not looking to Parrish to be the elite ball user once he's got the ball on the outside, because that's not where he does his best work. And to be quite frank, Merritt had more turnovers than him last night. Caldwell had more turnovers than him last night. And I think possibly Setterfield might have had more turnovers than him. So you can't sell me the fact that he's turning the ball over, because firstly that's not his shtick, and secondly he's probably about where the other mids are as well. And I think last week the same was with Durham. So I'm not buying into the whole his turnover. His turnover is a massive issue, and he didn't look outpaced to me last night. He's in there to get the clearance. Granted, we didn't do very well at centre clearance, but we did pretty well at clearance stoppages. It was the post clearance possession where we fell down. So I'm giving him a half Twix. I thought he was the only one sticking tackles, he and Setterfield at the start, and being really aggressive against the bigger bodies of the Geelong team. So let me know what you think on Parrish. Do you have him in your best 22, your best starting midfield, or are you more keen to develop and see Parrish? If that's, let me know what you think. Which side of the fence are you sitting on? At this stage of the game, I am more than happy to run with Darcy Parish in the centre. So I will leave it there for a post-replay review. As you can tell, I'm a little bit under the weather, so the voice is straining. I hope you all are enjoying the content so far. I have some very, very cool stuff lined up for you. Hopefully in the next couple of weeks, we'll see, depending on my guests' availability. You'll notice that I finally have hit the 1,000 subscribers mark. So thank you. Thank you so much to every single one of you. I value every single one of you and see all of your likes and shares and everything. None of them go unnoticed or unappreciated. So even if I can't thank you personally, just know that energetically and spiritually, I am sending you back all the love and all the good energy. So thank you from the bottom of my heart. It has been a whirlwind 2 months, and I'm really proud of what's come of it, and hopefully only up from here. So thank you so much, and I'll see you tomorrow night for the forecast.